an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, his official portrait hangs in Tiananmen Square. He was one of the founding members of the Chinese Communist Party, which he led for nearly 30 years. He lived for a long time. He ordered the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution. Oh, and a minor detail, he was the most murderous communist dictator in history, responsible for the deaths of millions and millions of people. And yesterday in the Commons, his little red book made a surprising appearance. This is a little red book here. Let's have a look at it in the Chamber of the Commons.
To assist Comrade Osborne in his dealings with his newfound comrades, I brought him along Mao's little red book. Let me quote. The quote is this. Behave. We must learn to do economic work from all who know how, no matter who they are. We must esteem them as teachers, learning from them respectfully and conscientiously. But we must not to pretend to know what we do not know. I thought it would come in handy for him in his new relationship.
So the Shadow Chancellor literally stood at the dispatch box and read out from Mao's little red book. And look, it's his personal signed copy. The problem is, half the Shadow Cabinet have been sent off to re-education.
Oh, sorry, I was just catching up on a few things there, just rereading it. With us now, the Times sketch writer Patrick Kidd and Professor Rana Mitter from the China Centre at the University of Oxford. Let me come to you first of all, Patrick Kidd. It is the job of sketch writers to write a little like a theatrical review of what's going on. I mean, if the Commons carries on like this, don't we just need to read the Hansard transcript?
No. I mean, we can have even more fun with it. But it was a jaw-dropping moment. And it was the equivalent. Imagine a scene in Central Office a week before, and George Osborne says, "How should I do my statement?" And he's told, "I think you should get out the old Bullingdon Club outfit and bring along a bottle of champagne and put a pig's head in the middle of the table." If he wants to play up to the stereotype of being a communist dinosaur whose standard of debate is student union politics, you produced Chairman Mao. It was astonishing.
Do you think, I mean, was it just a stunt, which he maybe thought was going to be quite funny, was a kind of almost self-deprecating, he had hoped, given everybody thinks he's pretty far left, that just incredibly backfired?
It backfired. It was a joke. It was a bit like the Liam Byrne famous letter, the one left in the Shadow Chief Secretary's office saying, "I'm sorry, there's no money left," which was a joke that again backfired. And it's given the Conservatives a great advertising campaign, free, and also something they can auction at their fundraising raffles. Very well.
Professor Mitter, is it wise in this day and age for any politician of the mainstream in Britain to quote Chairman Mao?
Well, I think it's dangerous because Mao himself would have been horrified. He would have regarded the entire Commons, including Mr McDonnell, as bourgeois deviationists, taking part in a so-called form of democracy which he didn't recognise at all. He was much more keen on direct action, as rumours have it that Mr McDonnell himself used to be back in the day. But the other thing is, of course, that Mao would have been horrified by today's China, which is probably the most capitalist society that exists on Earth, red in tooth and claw. Everyone from factory girls to investors knows that China today is not about Maoism, it's about capitalism. So I think the interpretation was also entirely wrong.
But we have this strange situation. You say China's no longer a Maoist society. I understand that. But unlike Russia, which de-Stalinized, China has never de-Maoized, if that's a new word I've just made up. They've never turned around and said, all of these deaths, that horrible repression, everything was wrong, the way even the Soviet Union did with Stalin.
Well, of course, Stalin seems to be coming back since Mr. Putin seems to be a bit of a fan. But sticking with China for a moment there, actually, they have rejected the Cultural Revolution specifically, the most violent years of the Red Guards in the late 1960s. But they also argue to this day that Mao was the man who made China stand up. In other words, he brought China to the kind of global status with a nuclear weapon, with that kind of international Maoist influence it had back in the 60s and 70s. Don't know, Andrew, if you were a student Maoist in Glasgow back in the day, but there were a few who were. And that that kind of global...
Not many.
No, I suspect you probably never
They were mainly at Oxford and Cambridge.
Well, rumour has it, so they say. But that's certainly that sort of global influence that China developed in the 60s and, of course, in a sense, has taken on today to become the new global superpower. That's what people in China still attribute to Mao, despite the murders.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Sorry to rush you. Thank you for that. It's never been better for you. The answer to our quiz, I'll tell you, was the little red book. That's the one.